Hello, good morning and welcome to Business 101. My name is Blyden Kem. On Business 101 today, we're looking at some key features around the world of business, as Business 101 is that program that looks at some nitty-gritty, especially fundamental analysis regarding business policies around the world, a direction that comes through looking at the very basics and the base of it. In today's Business 101, I will x-ray President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria's 3 years in office. Economically, what has been the diametrics, the direction, what has been the pros and the cons, what have been the achievement and the failures, and what needs to be done even further. Also, we'll also talk about the price of cooking gas as cooking gas price surge despite higher domestic supply. We'll begin from there before my guest joins the conversation. The price of liquefied petroleum gas, cooking gas, has continued to rise across the country despite a significant increase in its domestic production and a decline in imports. Data from the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority (NMDPRA) showed that local production from refineries and gas processing plants accounted for the bulk of Nigeria's LPG supply between April 2025 and April 2026, reducing the country's dependence on imports. However, the increased domestic supply has not translated into lower prices for consumers, with the cost of cooking gas rising to as high as 2,000 naira per kilogram in some parts of Nigeria. According to NMDPRA data, average daily domestic LPG supply ranged between 3,300 and 4,500 tons throughout the period under review. In March and April 2026, local supply stood at 4,500 tons per day, accounting for the majority of the national LPG availability. In contrast, imports by all marketing companies declined considerably during the period. Imported volumes fell to 200 tons per day in March 2026, compared with 1,600 tons per day in November 2025 and 1,500 tons per day in December 2025. The report showed that the total average daily LPG supply ranged between 4,200 tons and 5,200 tons, peaking at 5,200 tons per day in December 2025 before settling at 4,500 tons by April 2026. The steady domestic contribution has been linked to improved output from gas processing facilities and increased refining capacity, including supplies associated with the Dangote Petroleum Refinery. Despite improved availability of locally produced LPG, consumers continue to grapple with rising prices and occasional shortages. Cooking gas we sold for less than 1,000 naira per kilogram in many locations months ago and now sells for around 2,000 naira per kilogram, depending on the area. Well, marketers have attributed the development to supply chain challenges and scarcity in some locations, and noting that the product has become difficult to source in certain neighborhood market. Well, this would be a holistic conversation about while the changes in the price of these commodities. The conversation will really center around why, despite the fact that there's increased production for LPG, yet the price seems to be going higher and higher. The price seems to be soaring. So the big question in the lips of many Nigerians is, what next? Why is this happening? We'll also get to x-ray the president's 3 years in office. Economically, from a Nigerian's point of view, what has been the situation, what has been the progression, and what has been the limitation, and what needs to be done even further. But first, we'll go on a quick break, and when we're back, my guest will join a conversation who will be giving perspective to all of these analysis about the state of cooking gas and the state of president marking 3 years in office. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's your Business 101, and my name is Blyden. Okay. And now to the thick of the conversation, the main discussion. We'll be looking at the state of the price of cooking gas and why the prices seem to be going higher and higher, despite domestic production increasing in Nigeria. And similarly, we'll look at the state of the nation from economic point of view as the presidency and government in Nigeria marks 3 years in office. And men have been looking at different postulation around it, the positives and the negatives so far, or rather the achievement and the failure so far. And the big question would be how to navigate even further, especially looking at the next election coming. But my guest joins the conversation this morning, Dr. Wisdom Enang. He's an energy expert in his own regard, and he'll be giving perspective to all of this. Dr. Wisdom Enang, good morning. Good to have you join the conversation.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, Dr. Wisdom, and good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
All right, let's kickstart the conversation. First would be about the LPG situation in Nigeria. And many Nigerians seem to be surprised because looking at 2 months ago, thereabout, the cost of cooking gas in Nigeria was at about 1,000 naira per kg. And many Nigerians were so happy about it. And suddenly, the price has skyrocketed to as much as 2,000 naira per kg in different quarters. And here's why it's the bulk of a conversation for many Nigerians is the fact that, according to statistics we're having from Nigeria's midstream and downstream regulators' perspective, the data coming in says that local production has actually increased. Yet, many would have expected that with increase in local production, the price should come down, but it's not happening that way. You are an energy expert and you have lots of knowledge around this area. What's really going on regarding LPG?
All right, it's an interaction of demand and supply, and that's the real truth of the market. So let's think about it this way. In terms of our production, we produce in country, but let's just be fair to ourselves. The quantity that we produce in country is not enough to meet all of our domestic requirements. And so you still have a good chunk of the imports coming through and filtering into our prices mechanism. So what does that mean is that we will still be affected by exchange rate depreciation. Generally, the LPG prices have gone up because of the feedstock price and the uncertainty. And remember, the LPG, which is basically cooking gas, it's almost like, there are two components to it. There's the propane and the butane. So let's look at it, and that makes up LPG. So you then have to separate the butane, which is used for cooking, and the propane for aircraft. Now let's look at the sister molecule, which is the propane, from the same LPG. You'll find out that the prices of flight have more than doubled compared to a couple of months ago. And what that indicates is that the price of propane itself is quite expensive. So you don't expect any less from butane, which is, like I said, both of them come together to create the LPG fuel. So the global prices still govern, as in this case. Then the other one is the transportation and distribution costs. Those costs, still stand out very strongly in terms of the way it affects the final pricing. So those are some of the top factors and that I can think about. Import dependence is still a strong one. Now, also, when we look at the volume of domestic production, it's not as high as we consume. And whenever there is a deficit of that nature, then you can be reassured that the pricing will always go up in the face of limited supply. So I remember that a lot of people are migrating to cooking gas, as energy transition gets into full gear. So that and inflation and other factors have come together to create this situation that we have. And recall, the whole LPG value chain, like I said, made up of butane and propane, was so much of a challenge that the government had to step in, intervene in the aviation sector. So I would say, yes, some work is being done. The results has not crystallized as we have expected, but definitely some job is being done to be able to stabilize not only the upstream sector, like we're doing at the moment, but also the downstream sector, all the way to the midstream. A lot of work is being done on the background.
All right, a lot of work being done, especially when you're talking about cooking gas, and you giving perspective into it, breaking them into two compartments in that direction. Well, you've really done a holistic work on the analysis on it, trying to puncture it. It makes it a little difficult because many Nigerians will look at barely 2 months ago what really happened. And what you're saying is it's based on global tandem in price, causing it to go up in the supply chain, probably some disruption taking place, transportation cost, and the holistic inflation in Nigeria playing a factor in it. So the next question will be what next moving forward? How can Nigerians prepare moving forward amid prices? What could be the speculation that could come with it? A further increment beyond 2,000 naira per kg, or are we looking at a drop anytime soon?
Well, you know, the issue is I do expect a drop, and cognizant of the fact that the leadership of the NMDPRA has changed in recent times, you know, not because of the challenge that we're dealing with. It's quite, you know, a very endemic challenge. It's a challenge that affects not only the domestic sector, but it affects even the inflationary effects, which we are trying to stem. So I do believe the government will come in and see how they can create the right incentives so that the local refining folks, for example, the Dangote refinery, for example, would increase their output. Because essentially, this is about demand and supply. Whenever you have more supply, less supply than the demand, the price will go up and the quantity will fall. It's a very simple thing. And remember that the petroleum value chain had similar issues. At some point, the Dangote complained about having middlemen that were increasing the cost of the final product. And so he went in there, got new trucks to facilitate that entire, you know, value chain support, and also brought in, you know, arrangements with, you know, outlets like the MRS and Adova and all of those chaps. What is important is that none of this has been done yet for the gas subsectors. We are still living with the inherent limitations and challenges that that sector has always had. So you may ask, what is giving me the glimmer of hope that things will change? It is because I feel we now have a litmus test, well validated, for what the sector can look like if we reform it. And with the president's intentions to now reform this particular downstream sector, I think we'll have all of those extra layers of cost that are being passed on to the consumers being pushed out based on efficiency improvement. And I think we're going to have a point where we will have a lot more supply side, feed, because if we can have more supplies, then the demand will be moderated, and at the end of the day, we'll have better service and at a better value for money.
All right, Dr. Wisdom, and a good perspective regarding what next and regulatory positions of the prices and the possibility of price coming down even further for cooking gas, and this gives hopes for many Nigerians. Quickly, since you've talked about policies and policy changes playing a factor, let's navigate the conversation towards the presidency. Recently, all tiers of government, especially the state executive, the state and the federal government, really marked 3 years in office. I know we'll try to put side by side, maybe touch a bit on the problem economically also in the course of it. Well, let's start from the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the position of the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Well, we've heard from the beginning of it in terms of changes of policies that's happened over time. But a big question from a Nigeria's point of view is, while we're looking at the macroeconomic dynamics that are taking place, it's not really trickling down to the livelihood of Nigerians. So let me start by asking what you make of Nigeria's economic status in the last 3 years with the presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Okay, so I think we've had improved macroeconomic indicators. We see that with the exchange rate appreciation from about 19, almost 2000. We've appreciated, and all of this is done in a very, I like to say, a very holistic approach. Holistic in the context of, it's not the CBN intervening like they used to. It is holistic in the sense that the CBN has created the right ambient to engender market participation, and that market participation based on demand and supply has moderated the true value of the naira in a way that it might not be overly fair. I don't believe the true value of the naira ought to be below 1,000, but it's a good starting point. Now, if you look at our stock exchange market, there's a lot of experience going on now. Nigerian companies is like the pride of the African continent. So those are strong indicators. The president has also removed, given a lot more money to states to be able to build infrastructure. But the truth is, some of the gains of the economy is crystallizing a lot faster than some. The macroeconomic indicator outlook positive. I think right now, Moody's have improved Nigeria's rating to much more better rating in terms of the lender rating. So we are in a good spot.
So B+.
Yeah, the thing that we need to do right now is, and I call that the next phase of the challenge. It's going to be for us to see how that can trickle down into the welfare of the most vulnerable, right? But I think we have built a building block. But like the way I like to see things, the room at the top is the room for more improvement. So we haven't arrived. And remember, the structural challenges that the president has had to solve was enormous. Let's not be in any doubt about that. So we haven't arrived. But here we have built the structural base, and that's a strong build-up for us to now look at, okay, what are we doing at the subnationals? How many people have we been able to take from the vulnerable register into the productive population? And so we should be still